6:30. I would like to call the March 8th, 2022 School Building Committee meeting to order. Our first order of business is the acknowledgement of public participation. I'm going to read an abbreviated version of this if I could. On June 16th, 2021, Governor Baker signed into law an act extending certain COVID-19 measures adopted during the state of emergency. This act includes an extension until April 1st, 2020 of the remote meeting provision of its March 12th, 2020 executive order, suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law. Citizens with a question or comment can email mmortali@walpole.k12.ma.us or middleschoolproject@walpole.k12.ma.us. Our next order of business is consideration and approval of the meeting minutes from February 15th of 2022. Are there any questions or comments about the meeting minutes? Hearing none, I would take an order. I would, accept the motion to approve the meeting minutes from February 15th, 2022.
So moved.
I have a motion from Ms. Gallivan. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second from, I'm not sure who to give that to.
Fisher might have that.
I'm not sure who that second was.
So it was Boris, but I think Mr. Fisher said it as well.
All right, thank you. We'll take a second for Mr. Senek. Let me poll the committee. Ms. Gallivan?
Yes.
Dr. Goff?
Yes.
Ms. Hamilton?
Yes.
Mr. Conroy?
Abstain.
Mr. Barrett?
Yes.
Ms. Gaositz?
Yes.
Ms. Santiago Taylor?
Abstain.
Mr. Senek?
Yes.
And did I miss anybody?
Yeah. You missed me, Mike Fisher.
All right, Mr. Fisher.
Yes.
Anybody else?
You missed me.
Mr. Fisher. Yep,
John
Mr. Fisher.
Yep.
Yep.
Yes.
All right, very good. It is a vote. So our next order of business, and I guess I'll be turning this over to Chin or Brian, the update on the construction manager at risk procurement process.
Yep. Chin's going to walk us through. Chin, I think you're on mute. I'm still on mute. I don't know what happened. There you go. Now we can hear you.
Yep. I think that my screen is a little off. I'm trying this.
I think if you can drag that bar and drag it down, Chin. If you go in between where the page number's at. Nope, keep going down. Right there. Go up a little bit. Right there,
Oh.
and you can drag it down.
Yep.
Once you get there, you go.
Sorry. Okay. So Cmrs update and schedule update. So the overall schedule hasn't really changed too much. That we are anticipating the March 9th. So tomorrow we have the community meeting. And then that right now that we're proposing potentially the targeted community forum on May 4th. And everything else is still on schedule and we don't have any change on that. For the design development schedule and then just sort of basically the next month primarily that we have the community meeting tomorrow. We are expecting the draft estimate to come back from the estimator on the 11th, this coming Friday. And next week on the 15th, we will do the reconciliation. That will give us the DD estimate. And on the 22nd, our next Walpole School Building Committee meeting, we will be reviewing the DD cost estimate. If the project is on budget, then we could vote for DD submission if that's possible. But if not, then we would have an additional meeting on the 29th And on the 28th and 29th, we're expecting these are the two interview days for the total of 4 CM construction manager at-risk firms that are shortlisted. And then we are expecting to submit to MSBA on April 4th. And then at the moment, we are proposing to have school building committee meeting on the 5th of April to approve the selected construction manager, and then followed by another meeting on the 19th. And in terms of the CM at risk process timeline, that if we want to go into a little bit more details, is that right now that we are expecting the proposal to come back. We have an on-site meeting on the Friday, and proposal will come back on the 21st. And then we will do the interview on the 28th, 29th. And then on the April 1st, to rank the finalists, and then approval, seeking approval from the full committee on the 5th. And then the notice of award will go shortly after the approval from the full committee. And then the list of the shortlisted firm they are in alphabetical order: Bacon Construction, Fontaine Brothers, Shamet, W.T. Rich. I don't know if the committee has any questions or need any more information on the CM at risk process. Okay, hearing none, then Matt, I think that's yours after this.
Thanks, Jim.
Any questions on the schedule or big picture items at this point? Everything right now is tracking on schedule for submission to the MSBA by the first week of April.
Brian, how did we narrow it down to Bacon, Fontaine, Shamet, and W.T. Rich?
Did we narrow that down, or I'm sorry, I missed the first part of that, Mark.
So we've listed Bacon, Fontaine, Shamet, and W.T. Rich. Are they the only firms that have inquired, or is that a short
No,
list?
there were. I think in the last meeting we talked about, we had eight firms actually submit,
Mhm.
And then the qualification selection committee met multiple times. We went through all of their statement of qualifications, checked all the references, had a couple meetings, talked through kind of the thoughts on the information that firms had submitted. Everyone kind of scored everything, and then we basically shortlisted those 4 firms. There was a handful of firms that were relatively grouped close together, kind of that rose to the top, and the decision was to interview 4 of them. And as Chin mentioned, those firms were solicited for a request for proposal. So that went out on Monday. They'll be getting those proposals back in approximately 2 weeks. There'll be a combination of both a technical proposal, which is more in-depth information about their firms and thoughts on this particular project, with how they see it shaping up, or their approach to it. Also have a financial element to it, based on the schedule of the project and when they think they can complete it by, what they think their fee might be, what their general conditions cost might be based on their staffing, et cetera. We'll compare all of that. And then there'll be an interview portion the last week of March with all 4 firms. And following that, the selection committee will be able to rank those with the number 1 firm being recommended for approval.
Thanks, Brian. Appreciate it.
Yep.
So TAP A, Matt, you have TAP A's presentation. Thank you.
Okay, can everybody hear me and see the slides?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, we're going to start off tonight with our IT technology kind of update. This is to go over kind of where we currently stand with IT and technology in the building. Doug Faria is from Advanced Technology. He will be presenting this information. And this is based off of kind of where we stand with our programming meetings with the user groups. And he'll give you kind of a broad overview of where we're at, some of the details that we went over and reviewed with Bill and the user groups, and kind of where we need to go and what we need for the future as we continue with the documentation. So Doug, I will turn it over to you now.
Thank you, Matt. So with our project here from a technology perspective, I want to talk a little about the process first, and then follow up with some of the more detailed design elements that are currently included in our project. So technology on projects such as this one is carved into two categories. The first category is infrastructure, and the second category is equipment. And the goal here is to combine everything that's in the base bid infrastructure with a technology equipment plan that is later purchased in FF&E to provide a state-of-the-art integrated educational technology system for staff and students. You can change the slide, Matt. Thank you. So what is technology infrastructure? Technology infrastructure is really everything that's built into the building to support technology. It includes everything from data cabling, category 6 or category 6A cabling and passive components. Passive components are the components of the technology that do not require power. They don't plug in. It involves pathways to support the technology infrastructure, conduits, boxes, those types of things. And then we extend the infrastructure to include things like networking equipment, such as network switches in this case. And I noticed on the agenda, you have proprietary systems being voted upon this evening. One of those proprietary systems is indeed the networking equipment, and that equipment has been standardized throughout the district on a manufacturer named Aruba. One of the biggest advantages to having a standardized networking infrastructure on the network switch side of things is that you have what's called in the technology industry a single pane of glass to manage all of your networking needs across the district. Most districts aspire to standardization as you've achieved already. So what we're doing is essentially continuing an already successful networking topology for you folks as part of this project. And that networking equipment will be part of the base contract infrastructure. The intercom system is also included in the technology infrastructure. It is also going to be a proprietary system for the very same reasons in terms of a single pane of glass. And that manufacturer is going to be Telecor. The intercom is essentially just a paging system, speakers in classrooms and head-end equipment. And the Telecor system is a unique system in some ways in that it gives you the ability to link all of your buildings together. So if you wanted to make an all-call announcement to not only this school, but the rest of the schools in the facility, in the district, you could do so by standardization, and particularly standardized on the Telecor system. Technology infrastructure also includes classroom audio enhancement. And finally, as-built documentation and testing for the infrastructure. Okay, Matt. The technology equipment is everything. If you were to turn the school upside down and shake it, everything that would kind of fall out on the technology side of things and the furniture side of things for that matter. So what we're looking at in terms of technology equipment is interactive display technology, projectors in classrooms, interactive flat panel displays in classrooms, your enterprise wireless system, which will be Extreme, again, another product that's been standardized district-wide. Voice over IP, which is the telephone system, standardized once again with a MyTel product. The vendor that services the telephone system district-wide is Partners Technology, a firm we've worked with and are very familiar with, have worked with many times over the years. Computing devices are actually purchased as part of the technology equipment. Teacher computers, admin computers. The one thing I will exclude there would be the one-to-one computing devices, one-to-one meaning one computing device per one student. There's a refresh program currently in place in the district, so there's no need for the project to pay for those devices. And of course, printers and different peripherals such as document cameras and those types of things. Once the building is actually under construction, is when we start to finalize the equipment. And I'd like to talk about the process by which we achieve a successful outcome here on the equipment side of things. So we meet regularly with technology leadership. Some of those meetings have already, as Matt alluded to, occurred. General planning, and we've focused primarily on infrastructure. Last thing we want to do is start making final decisions on technology equipment that is in a constant state of flux too soon. And right now it's very much too soon. That's not to say that we can't think holistically and prepare budgets and think about coordinating the infrastructure to support the technology equipment. We move from budgeting and coordination to procurement. That is generally in the form of a request for quotes or request for proposals for multiple state contractors for the varying classes of equipment. The varying classes of equipment are, generally speaking, voice over IP, wireless, technology equipment such as PCs and peripherals, and classroom audio visual. So generally speaking, we have 4 or 5 different packages that go out. That's because each of these categories of technology really requires a focus and a specialization on the vendor's part. We move into installation and configuration of all of the equipment, followed by staff and teacher training, punch lists, and user issues. I always like to make a differentiation between what's a punch list item and what's a user issue. A punch list item is there's a projector that's not installed in classroom A101. A user issue is I'm having sporadic connectivity issues between my laptop and the projector. And some of those things don't surface until the systems have actually been used for a few weeks. So we are very proactive on the punch list side of things. Then we worked with the follow through to make sure all of any and all user issues are addressed by the appropriate vendors. This is a typical classroom. And as you can see, we have some symbols here. And what we have is data cabling pretty much around the perimeter of the classroom, mostly for flexibility. We have 2 data in the ceilings of every classroom. You can see it's a triangle with a 2 and a WAP. WAP stands for wireless access point. That is, again, the cabling infrastructure to support and connect to a wireless access point that will be procured and installed during the FF&E and technology equipment phase of the project. We have teacher connectivity pathways. So you see some various symbols that say AV on the plans. Those are AV boxes and conduits that will be used to connect devices in the front and the rear of the classroom to the projector, which will be mounted above a marker board front and center of the teaching wall there. You see an AV and a triangle, which is a data for an FP. That's actually for the projector. Peripheral connectivity, we have, again, we have convenience outlets around the perimeter, but then we also have what I'll call a phone jack with a W. That's a wall phone jack down near the corridor, the corridor wall there. You have a clock above the door. And then in the center of the classroom, you have an intercom speaker. That's the S with the circle around it. And the audio system, which is, I think that's probably self-explanatory from a symbology standpoint. So there'll be an enhanced audio system in every classroom that will serve 2 purposes. The primary purpose is to elevate the teacher's voice and a student's voice. So there'll be 2 microphones per classroom, wireless microphones. And then in time, we'll take the audio feed out from the projector and connect it to that enhanced audio system to amplify the audio out from the projector, so that any video that's playing on the projector, you won't be limited to the projector speaker that is in many cases inadequate for a large classroom like this. You'll be able to hear that audio coming over the audio system as well.
And then we also have a 3D view down here, kind of based on what we had shown you previously in the interiors and exteriors presentation. And this view is kind of sitting at the teacher's desk, kind of looking out in this direction. So the view that you're seeing down below is the non-teaching wall on this side here, but that wall is essentially the same as the teaching wall on this side. So the only thing that you're not seeing in this view is the wall with the teaching wall, and that would have, your projector up above that center marker board on the opposite wall that you're not seeing in this view. And then one other thing, I don't know if you went over, Doug, is besides for having the projection screen on the main teaching wall, there will also be one mobile digital flat screen, which will be on a mobile stand, right, that basically can be wheeled around the room as well, so that there's the different setups for the room that the teachers use, that can be wheeled around as another teaching display as well.
That's correct. So that you have a primary display at the front of the classroom, and that'll be above the marker board. That's an ultra short throw laser projector, and that'll be for whole class instruction, if you will. And then students will have the ability to do some smaller group collaboration using the interactive flat panel in every classroom.
Again, we sat down with Bill and some of the different users from the school and the technology department, and we've reviewed this layout with them, and everyone is happy with what we have currently showing in the plans. Does anybody have any further questions?
I have one, Mark. The enhanced audio, does that take away the need for the systems that hearing impaired students need in the classroom?
That's a very good question. No, it's meant to augment audio. And one of the advantages to having a system like this is that it can easily interface with assisted listening systems. So the way we have it designed currently is you have a hardwired amplified speaker in the ceiling, and then you have a wireless media connector. And the wireless media connector serves a couple of purposes. You can plug your phone into it and send your audio from your phone to the speaker if you wanted to. But it also has an auxiliary out that could be used to connect to an FM transmitter. So if you do have students that are severely hearing impaired and they do have a need for FM transmitters, you can easily attach those transmitters and receivers to this system wirelessly.
Okay, but that means that that our classrooms are not equipped for hearing impaired students unless we purchase extra technology. Is that what you're saying?
Generally, the FM transmitters are provided by either the school or the user, because they're very specific to the product that's actually being used by the student. But you would not, other than the transmitter and the receiver, or the earbud, you would not need to buy any other equipment.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Any other questions? Otherwise, we're going to continue moving on with the presentation. Thank you, Doug.
You're welcome. Thank you, everyone.
So next, we're going to give an overview on the kind of an update on, and these are the images that we presented last week to the working group, and we'll kind of go through this real quick to show where we're currently at and how we're proceeding with the design. So right now, there's a couple options that we presented. The option that you're looking at here, option 1, is the 1.5 megawatt generator that would support the entire school. So the entire school would be on the emergency generator, and the mechanical systems or the ERUs would actually be cycled on and off, one or two at a time, to run through the system to keep the size of the generator down. And this layout, because of the size of the generator, there's a certain distance you need to maintain from the building for the exhaust and the stack heights and everything else to meet all the DEP requirements, since it's a large generator over 1 megawatt. So this option, there's a certain perimeter that we need to maintain off of the property line, so that you can see the property line going around kind of the perimeter here. The first dashed line is a line that's 60 feet offset from that property line. And that's the line that we kind of need to maintain the generator away from the property line in order to maintain the sound requirements of sound dispersing over the property line. So that kind of limits where we can put the generator at on the site. So based on these requirements from the DEP and the size of the generator, these are the different options that we're kind of presented to the working group. And this option one is the option that we are proceeding with in the base bid, which is the full 1.5 megawatt generator. And we have a stack that's going to be 67 feet, 6 inches off the finished floor in order to meet the DEP requirements for that system. And as you zoom in back here, we've kind of tucked it back in behind the building. We're still working on the design back here of where this will actually fall. And we're kind of reworking the plan to get this as far back onto the site as possible, so it's not going to be visible as you're entering the building with the woods and everything else kind of protecting it. And down here is kind of a site section cutting through the site north to south kind of here. You can see the generator size, the stack height, and the kind of the tree line height of how that compares and sits with the rest of the building on the site. This is another option showing the full generator option supporting the whole building. This was just another option that we showed to where if you needed to maintain the required distance from the building to get only a 10-foot stack on the generator, you needed to maintain a distance of 225 feet away from the building. So this option just showed where that would actually fall on the site, which kind of fell in the middle of the playing fields at the front of the building. And it wasn't really, as pleasing when you're driving down, entering the site to see that generator. So this was one option that we decided not to proceed with. Again, this is the same option, just looking where else on the site it can go. This is on the Washington Street side. It would be located right off the new main drive into the school. And again, because of the appearance, we didn't really want to see that as you entered the building. We did not proceed with this option either. This was a second option that we looked at, splitting the generator. It still maintains the whole building on the generator, but we looked at doing 2 smaller generators because once you go lower than that 1 megawatt, you don't have to meet all the special DEP requirements for the stack and other requirements for testing and so forth. So this explored that option, but it kind of doubles up on, you have 2 generators. We also have to provide another emergency distribution switchboard for the sinking gear, because once you go with the 2 smaller generators, it does not have all of the same equipment built into it. So you either need to provide additional space inside the building to accommodate that or outside the building. And based on, additional cost for having longer runs and double runs and other stuff, we did not proceed with this option either. Finally, this is the last option that we looked at, and we are proceeding with this option as the deduct alternate for the DD estimate. This is an option with a much smaller generator, this 600 kilowatt generator, and this is only supporting part of the building. So this would be supporting kind of everything north of the main entry. So that includes, we have a list of everything up here, the kitchen, north wing lighting, 1 elevator, the BMS system, the fire pump, IDF closets, the emergency lighting. It also includes the auditorium, the gym, media center, cafeteria, kitchen, and admin. Everything basically up here to the north, except for the performance equipment inside the auditorium. And again, this option would again require an additional space for the sink gear and everything else inside the building. And this is the deduct alternate that we are carrying in the DD estimate set. And again, this is a much smaller generator with only a 10-foot stack. Any questions on the generator before we proceed onward?
I do.
Mr. Conroy.
Yeah, okay, I'm gonna roar through them. First off, I'm gonna sound like a left-wing tree hugger. Do the generators come solar?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay, thank you. Now, next thing, are we powering by diesel or are we powering by natural gas?
It'll be diesel. There's no natural gas coming to the building. So based on our conversation with everybody, there was going to be a premium in order to get that natural gas line onto the site. And since this isn't run on a regular daily basis, there would be much more additional costs for them since they're not making any money back from the town for feeding anything else from the building.
Okay. now you're making somebody to remember to fill the tank because you're gonna have to run an exercise on a weekly basis, which I see as a problem. But next step is building code wise, what is the minimum we need to make this work? The whole building?
For
What size generator?
the what that
What does the
1.5
building
is,
code say? Yeah, the 1.5 will power even the last little outlet for a phone. What is the minimum building code requirements that we need for generator?
oh, so that's what's on the list up here. So for the 600 kilowatt, you've got the emergency lighting, the IDF closets, the fire pump, the BMS, the elevator, and lighting. And then typically you have, the kitchen on it as well to maintain anything that's in the cooler and freezer, plus the heating so that nothing freezes in the building.
Okay, so to have 1.5 megawatt, it seems a little nuts. Is we're going to have kids in school when the whole town is down for power, and which doesn't make any sense. We're going to pay a premium for it. Plus, the size of the generator is incredible. It's like the size of a house, 42 foot long, 12 foot wide, and 12 foot long, plus the stack. My opinion since day one is we don't need this. Why would we go beyond it? And why would we power everything in the world off of it? And that's where I'm going with this. I think it's a little bit overkill. The other thing is the town has not stepped up to say what they want this building to be in regards to if we do have an emergency, what do we need as a town, not as a school, but as a town, in case there's a hurricane, flood, or whatever. And I haven't seen that yet, is what we would need to power. Now, I can appreciate the fact that, yeah, you got to heat it, you got to cool it, you got to keep the kitchen going as far as and not spoils. But as far as why do we need a 1.5 megawatt generator other than it's nice?
Jack, if I could chime in, this is a 600 kilowatt generator. We've ruled out the larger ones.
Now,
Well, the larger ones already.
Go ahead.
When do we rule that out? Because this is what's been presented tonight.
Correct. The large 1.5 generator is what's in the base bid right now. The 600, which you're looking at here, is the deduct alternate. And right now, we've been informed by the school to proceed with the 1.5. And it's all going to come down to, the cost estimate, how things look when we get this cost estimate.
Time out. Whoa, time out. I'm on the building committee. The school told you to go with 1.5? It's not their decision. It's this committee's decision.
No,
Could I
it's just,
ju-
we should
Could I
we should
jump in for a
rephrase
second?
that.
No, that's not correct.
We
Yeah.
should rephrase
That's
that.
correct.
So Jack, so at the end of schematic design, we had the same conversation based on the cost of what we thought might be the cost of the two generators. And then Chap A was looking into some of the regulatory requirements of where the larger generator could be located. So that's what they're coming back to tonight based on all the information that they've received, both from the DEP, from where they would need to be, the height of the generator, the height of the stack, the location close to the building. They got the acoustic information back regarding the decibel level and how far that would need to be back from the property line. So that's further kind of limited where this thing could go. Currently in the design, we haven't changed anything from schematic design. We're still holding the 1.5 or 3 megawatt generator. That is currently getting priced as part of the DD estimate, but as Matt indicated, we're also getting a price for the smaller generator, I believe the 600 kilowatt generator. So we actually can see that difference because now based on the location, things have changed from the schematic design of the general cost of the generator is X, but now we have a location with lengths of duct bank and then updated costs on generators, et cetera. So the idea is at the end of DD, we will know kind of the real cost difference in addition to some of the other questions you brought up, related to just overall needs. So that way you should be able to make a pretty informed decision.
Well, my informed decision is going to get a little mad here is why will we power every outlet in that building when there's no need to? Shouldn't even be discussed. We should be at the minimum and then go from there as an alternate. Why are we gilding a lily on this?
Jack, I think the 600 kilowatt, I could be incorrect, is at the minimum.
Okay, that's at the minimum, but it's a deduct. We need that to be
Yep.
the base bid. And if we wanted to go, if we have the money, but even at a 1.5 megawatt, why would we even consider going that to power everything down to the last outlet? Because it's not needed.
I
Once
think,
again,
Jack,
I'll say it again, it's gilding the lily. You're gonna power an entire building down the last outlet for no reason, because they're not gonna be there in times if there's a problem. Basically,
Yeah.
emergency generators, for anybody who doesn't understand, is to get the people out of the building. Now, if we happen to have in our people on the emergency management says, well, we'd like to have something for food and this and that, that's fine. But we don't need to be powering the last outlet in the gym. That's my whole point.
I think, Jack, we're in agreement on that, that the thought was that the town, Donnie, wanted us to consider if it needed to be in a town-wide emergency. But given budget constraints, if we had to dial back to the lesser option, that he'd be okay with
Mark,
that.
if I could just jump in here.
Yeah, Jim.
Mark, you're completely 100% correct. Don had asked, let's see what it looks like to get this whole building powered up. He's worried that it could be used in an emergency situation if necessary. I can tell you from the town perspective right now, that's not my intent. But from what I recall, this committee had agreed, let's get a price on it. Donnie's in charge of all the buildings. We all kind of felt that the writing was on the wall, that it might not be going in that direction. Who would have known that gas and oil prices would have skyrocketed the way they have? But I don't think it's set in stone that this is happening, certainly not in my book. So Bridget, did I miss anything on that one, Superintendent Goff?
No, that's correct. I believe there was a look on the price and, after we take a look at it, my opinion about this, I don't know if you want my opinion now, but, when I don't know if the cost estimate came up, but when you look at the cost, it just about does it for me. It's just really expensive. And I just think it's just more fiscally responsible to look at the smaller generator. I agree with Jack on this one.
Okay. Now, I will tell you, is in the business, if you put this as a deduct, you never get your full value back. You're better off as an add. Okay.
Yeah,
So
Jack,
this is Chris
we agree.
from, I was gonna say, this is Chris from TAPE. I think the deduct is only, the strategy there is only for cost estimating, Jack. And that by the time this goes out to bid, we would decide which trigger to pull, which configuration to go with. But we're just carrying it right now so that we can always keep in line what the estimate values are, not actually bid it that way. I think that's kind of the intent behind that.
Just
Chris.
so you understand, guys, is in this business, you're more concerned about your base bid than the alternates. And sometimes the alternates don't necessarily reflect the actual costs, and you tend to not focus them as much as you do on the base bid. But it's if you're just presenting us a number, that's fine. If this was we're going to go with the big generator, no, I don't think so. Thank you.
Chris and Matt, so tonight is the update on the generator. There's obviously other factors related to the generator decision, other than just cost. We should have cost by the first building committee meeting, and we will have cost by the 22nd and the 29th when we actually have to vote this package. The goal is that the committee then can make a decision, at either the 22nd or the 29th meeting, and then the goal is that you guys are moving into construction documents with a decision, because you obviously need to start detailing out the infrastructure of the building to accept the generator. So when would be a drop dead decision point?
I would say when we go to the DD submission, Brian, we want to have this finalized, and I frankly think, just like Jack is saying and Bridget's confirmed and others on the call, that I think that this decision is probably going to be made for us when we get the DD estimates back. Everything in the world is just so much more expensive, and so I think as part of the VE process, it may just be made. But yeah, when we go to the DD submission, we would want to know for the price purposes, which one we're going with, and then from there on, we can do the detailing and capture that in the construction documents. So
All
I
right,
think you've
so-
got, a few more weeks here to chomp on it. But again, just to be redundant, I think that the cost estimates are going to highlight what the position's going to be.
Okay,
So-
so at the next meeting on March 22nd, we'll have the DD cost estimate reconciled. If we're looking to discuss items to get us back within budget, depending on where they come in, this could possibly be on that. And I think regardless, we'd want to make a decision one way or the other by the end of March with what direction the town wanted to go in, the district wanted to go in. And then that way, that cost in the DD submission is final, and then TAPA's team can start detailing the project accordingly in construction documents.
So,
Okay.
so Jack, I would add, keep the questions coming, because it means kind of lengthier explanations for all of us. And so, that's important. Thank you. TAPA, you want to continue?
Sure. Thank you, Mark. So moving on, we're just going to quickly go through the kind of updated floor plans. There hasn't been any major changes, but there's been a couple minor ones we just want to show you guys as we continue to develop. The classroom wings are pretty much the same as we've been presenting to you earlier. Typical classrooms, technology, science classrooms are pretty much all the same. Just some minor changes as we go through with the programming meetings.
And Matt, I'll just point out, for folks that maybe are new to the process, schematic design, when we looked at those floor plans, it was kind of just general details as far as the size of shapes of spaces and the adjacencies. There were some details, but obviously, just looking at this, you guys have much more, that next layer of detail on all these drawings. I don't know if you just want to talk to that a little bit so folks understand, the level of detail that the drawings are currently at. Things like dimension of elevations, that type of stuff.
Yes. So as we go through DD and continue on in the CDs, you'll see more details. And again, as Brian was saying, start getting all the dimensions on the buildings. You start seeing much more of the enlarged plans for the different spaces, such as the bathrooms, where we lay out, all the tile and the fixtures, provide dimensions on that. You start seeing all the different details for the different pieces of the buildings, kind of typical corner details, intersection details. Again, we've got the millwork shown, and then further on into the projects or into the documents, we've got equipment plans that show all the different pieces of casework, the sizes, the dimensions, and then all those finishes and everything else get put into the specs. We've got, building sections, interior elevations. And again, we had some of these during SD, but, we keep adding to the set to get all the details that we need as we continue on with the construction documents. One area that we did modify based on meetings with Mike and also Maria Hall from food service is we adjusted the layout of the manager's office. Originally, we had the food service manager's office here, which was going to be a public access point so that people could come in and, pay their bills and go over food requirements for their kids and so forth. And then we had the manager's office, which was a real small, like a 6x6 or 8x8 office tucked in over here. But based on further conversations that we had with Mike and Maria, they really needed 2 private offices in this area due to, they had to have private conversations for one person and the other person that was in there. They didn't want to have that issue of the privacy, since we couldn't give them a big enough office. And the compromise, if they wanted those 2 larger offices in this space, was we'd have to take over additional space from out of the actual servery and kitchen. So from talking with them, they agreed to remove Maria's kind of the food service office from this location. We moved the manager's office into that spot, and they're going to find another spot for Maria's office outside of this building because they did not want to compromise any of the food service equipment or layouts that we need for both this school and for the central kitchen. And then we also were asked to start providing some outdoor storage for snow blowers, outside equipment, shovels. So we added one location in here, and we were asked to provide one other location at the other end of the building. Down, I'll show you down over here somewhere, so that way they can maintain this area. And we're still working on trying to get that storage in, whether if it can fit under the stair. We looked at back here, but we have some issues with grading. So we're still trying to work on one more location to get that outdoor storage down at this end of the building. Again, we continue to develop the auditorium. We have the seats shown. we just provided more details that we continue to go along to get, coordination with not only our drawings, but getting all of our consultants' information and make sure all of that is clearly coordinated for the ongoing DD estimate set and construction. This is the second floor. Quickly flip through these, which is essentially the same as the first floor for all of the classroom spaces, except for the science classrooms. These classrooms on the second and third floor have prep rooms for the older kids. Overall third floor classroom wing. Any questions on the floor plans before we move on? Okay, we'll continue on to the proprietary items.
Come on.
So Doug touched on this slightly earlier for the technology. We've got the distribution communication system and the data communication system, which are proprietary, so they will tie in and communicate with the other systems throughout the district. And then the only other items that we have right now for proprietary are for the door hardware. We've got the keying, so it kind of matches the rest of the systems throughout the other schools. Lock sets as well. We've got the exit devices or panic devices on the doors, and then the closers up top will automatically close the doors once they're open. And then also the key access boxes. There is one type that the fire department requires and another type that the police department requires. So right now, those are all the current proprietary items that we have on the list, and we'll ask you to vote on them. Do we want to do that now, Brian, or after the presentation is over?
I mean, you can do the proprietary items now, and then we'll have to run that through the town process as well.
Okay.
Excuse me, before you go, I couldn't get my mute.
Yeah,
Is,
Jack.
You talked about how everything's gonna function, okay, which is fine after. Do you guys have, and I'm talking to the architects and Compass, how it's gonna function during, when we go from phase to phase to phase? I think sometimes that gets lost a lot of times. When it's all done, everybody goes, oh, this is great. But when we go from phase to phase to phase, I think that's a unique problem. Sometimes it's overlooked and on how everything's going to function. And I do hope that's going to be part of all this.
Are you
This is-
referencing the general phasing plans for the project, or?
Yeah, well, you show me what's going to happen. You know, I know each thing when we're all done. Wonderful, this. But during the phasing, there's a lot of stuff that isn't going to be built, or a lot of stuff that you're going to have to bypass or something. And that you're going to have kids in there for 4 years that are going to have to function with this. And I would think that at a minimum, you would have to show us everything that's going to happen during each phase in relationship to everything that you've presented.
So we are presenting that to the working group next week.
Okay.
And then we'll follow up with you guys the following week for that presentation.
Okay, just want to make sure that happens. Everybody looks now and then at the end, but what happens during the couple of years that this is all happening. So thank you.
Yeah, Jack, we had a kickoff meeting, or Compass met with Tepe back on the 1st, kind of talked through some of those topics. We went through the plans. We actually have it as a standing agenda item on the working group meeting. And that's also something that will be, once the CM is on board, because obviously they're going to have an opinion on what they can do and what maybe they can improve upon. So yeah, that's definitely on the agenda from here on out.
Okay, thank you.
So are we considering proprietary products now, some kind of a vote on approving the list of proprietary products? Because if we are, I think we need a review as to what qualifies as proprietary and what exactly we're voting on.
So say that again, Mark. So yeah, I think if you have questions on any of these products, I think these are products were based on conversations with the district and Donnie, and obviously the technology. And then Matt, I mean, we could give it, you want a definition of proprietary?
No, I'm just looking for sort of a summary, I guess. I don't know if anybody else feels the need.
Matt,
But
I think
what proprietary can't be is like, you can't decide you want to go proprietary because you like the color, or something like that. It's the proprietary necessity is because each one of these, like you can see right here, it says that the first one so it can be compatible with the rest of the district, and then the second one under technology is also so that it's compatible with the network products already used in the town. Same with keying, lock sets, exit devices, closers, and then the key access boxes. All of those are standards that the town has adopted in some form or fashion in other places. And it is to the benefit and operation side of the town to maintain those. And so that's why we're suggesting these as proprietary items at this time that we know about that have come up. So,
And the reason for doing this is because it's a public project and public bidding. So if you don't put it in as proprietary, you have to, provide 3 equals. So if we put this in as a standard spec item with the equals, you may or may not get what you want as the product, which may not then be compatible with everything else that you have in the district.
So for instance, if police and fire have a master key, it needs to be a Schlage lock for every building. Something to that effect. Is that what proprietary means?
Well, basically, let's look at the key access boxes that the fire department has their own manufacturer that they use throughout the town, and then the police has their own. So that's kind of an example to make it the same. And all the keying and lock set and the exit devices and everything else, this is basically all came from conversations with Donnie and trying to get what he needs to kind of keep it intact with whatever else is going on in the district.
And Mike, one other thing just for clarification, as the DD submission, we are required to list if there will be proprietary product to MSBA as part of the package. So that's why this is up for this is why we are asking for the vote today.
Very good. Thank you. Does anybody else have any questions or comments about the proprietary product?
Yeah, a quick one.
I do.
Mark.
Yeah, Jack.
On the technology stuff, the Aruba and the Telcor, basically it's everything that's within any kind of an active piece of gear that's within the building, right?
Correct.
And anything that goes outside the building from the SDP on out, it's not going to be in the base. It's not going to be in the base bid. It's going to be in the FFE bid or FFE portion of the budget.
Could you repeat that once more again?
All right. From the data closet out, where you're going outside the building, where does that cost come in?
That is part of the project. So bringing in all the utilities to the actual building is part of this project scope.
And so is it in infrastructure or FFE?
That's infrastructure.
this is, yeah.
Okay.
So Jack, do you mean from the street to the MDF to the main computer room?
Okay, you're gonna have cabling, I assume underground cabling that's gonna go from East Street all the way into the main data closet. Okay.
Yeah.
Is that included in one of these 2 categories? Either the base bid or the FFE?
No, that's
yes,
included
base
in the
bid.
total. That's included in the
base
total
bid.
project budget under utilities.
Okay.
Yeah, so the town will bring in fiber, whoever's providing fiber service to the town. They'll pull from the street into the room. The conduit that it runs in, though, will be provided by the contractor, the site contractor and the electrical contractor. So from the pole into the building, all of the conduit and infrastructure to receive the cable is part of the base bid. The cabling itself, the fiber cable, will be done by the town's vendor, and that's included in the total project budget under utility costs. And then once it gets into the room, the infrastructure within the building is the base bid, getting everything out to the rooms, and then anything you plug in within the rooms is going to be part of the technology equipment budget.
Okay, understood. Thank you.
Yep.
I have a comment.
Jack, go ahead.
My understanding is on proprietary, the way it's always been is if you're the only one, you're proprietary. But these things are not necessarily the only one. It's just that it'd be nice to match up with the town. Is that a correct statement?
Correct.
Yeah, you still have to include an or equal clause Jack. It's just you're stating that these are proprietary. This is the one you want, but you still have to provide an or equal clause.
No, I understand that, Brian, but there are certain things that I've seen come down the road that are once in a lifetime and no one else has it, and they're allowed to do that, and you have to use that. I understand that. So for us to vote on it, it doesn't make sense in the fact that if there's other or equals. And the other thing, my experience with is when you go with saying, we love this closer, that closer goes up about 200% as far as like a door closer. That's what my point is. So proprietary is, we would like it because it would mesh with the rest of us stuff, but it isn't necessarily proprietary because it's the only one of uniqueness. Is that a fair statement?
No, I mean, the way that you can do proprietary is if there's a benefit to the district or a benefit to the owner, because in certain areas, if you're trying to avoid, if you provided the 3 manufacturers per bidding law for like any type of door hardware and you got whatever you wanted, you don't want to incur additional expenses by having to then have, different maintenance requirements, different replacement parts, et cetera. If the district's already established something as a standard.
No, I understand 100%, Brian. But here's the deal, is these guys will just sit there and just bang you. I've been down that road before. So what I would suggest is any proprietary stuff we have is we have a base bid of this and an alternate of the others, whether it be technology or whatever. Now, hear me out. Very simple. Is guess what? You're going to scare the guys who think they got it made in the shade, that they're going to get this because they're proprietary. No, now all of a sudden they're going to have to really start putting the real number down as opposed to like, yeah, I'd like to make another 50% on this. Does that make sense, Brian?
I hear what you're saying, but a lot of these things are going to be baked into the overall bids. I mean, we're not necessarily going to need to see them. So you're saying break out an alternate for a different product?
Yeah, well, you could do that as an alternate. I mean, you shake them up. I mean, I've been down the road with generators before. I had one guy that was 30,000 and the proprietary guy was 50 because he was written into the spec. Whoa, he all of a sudden dropped down to 30. That's my point. If these guys know that they are made in the shade, they're going to just sit there and just pound us. Being nice about the way I word it, but that's what happens. So that's something to think about on this stuff.
So Jack, would you like to make a motion, and I don't know, Brian, if this is possible, a vote to accept proprietary products or alternates if possible? Some kind of motion to that effect?
Well, not so, Mark, not so much a motion is that we have an add alternate for any of the proprietary, I mean, the non-proprietary or deduct, however they do it, because we can sit there and get really, try to be nice, but really get tucked to by some of these. And
I'm sorry, Brian, weren't you, didn't Chin just say we're voting on this because the MSBA requires us to designate proprietary items in advance in the DD drawings? I mean, I appreciate all the talk about the bid and I'm into it 100%, but the vote tonight is because of the submission to the MSBA, right? Or is that not right?
For the time being that, yes, we are required to take an action right now for MSBA submission for the DD.
Right.
Now,
so,
this is not the submission. This is not going out to the street by any stretch of imagination.
Right. So all we got to do is decide whether or not we want to let the MSBA know that we might have some proprietary items. I believe that's the vote.
That's right. And then we have time to figure out a bidding strategy between now and whenever we do that.
All right.
All right.
So I make a motion that we identify the proprietary.
Whoa. I don't want, Ben, I don't want this to get lost. Okay? You're just jumping on it. I don't want this to get lost. Okay?
It's not gonna get
No,
lost.
not gonna get lost. You're jumping on it. No, I'm sorry. I don't want it to get lost because I'm tired of this stuff going buying up. Okay? It's gonna be discussed and I'm bringing it out.
I believe Ben was saying that we are not bound to these proprietary products with this vote. Am I correct, Ben?
Yeah, it's just a procedural vote for the MSBA, Jack.
It's a procedural vote for the MSBA.
Yeah.
If I can say this a little bit differently, What it
Yes.
is we have to specify if we want a proprietary product. And then when we put it out to bid later on, we can make a decision to open it up and say, we'll take alternatives. We can't go in the reverse. We can't say we'll take alternatives now, and then 6 months from now, when it goes out to bid, then decide it's going to be proprietary.
Yeah, I
think-
think that's another way to put it, Jack. Yeah.
Correct, and
Right.
and I think it just let the minutes reflect that, we'll look at other ways, whether it's through alternates or something, what Jack is getting at, is there a way that makes sure that they just don't inflate the price incorrectly
but-
because we're limiting competition?
I'll
So
be
we can
honest-
figure that between now and bid.
Brian, I'll
Mr.
be honest
Fisher,
with
Mr.
you.
Fisher, yep, Mr.
I'll
Fisher.
I'll be honest with you. I've seen that multiple times. A particular vendor gets written into the proposal, into the RFP, and what you get back is inflated prices on the specified equipment. And
I think
and
we're
so
all
I
in
think-
agreement, Jack.
Mr.
Yeah.
okay.
Mr. Barrett, would you like to restate your motion, a vote to accept a list of potential proprietary products for the project? Something to that effect? I'm not sure what the legalese would be.
Yeah, I was just echoing what Chin said. So I'd make a motion to designate these products as proprietary items for the purpose of submission to the MSBA, with the caveat that, as Jack and Jack said, we'll need to look at it closer prior to putting it out on the street for bid.
So very good. We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
I have a second, Mr. Fisher. Let me, the committee. So I vote yes. Mr. Conroy,
Yes.
Mr. Barrett,
Yes.
Mr. Fisher,
Yes.
Ms. Gaositz,
Yes.
Dr. Goff,
Yes.
Mr. Frisha,
Yes.
Ms. Santiago Taylor,
Yes.
Ms. Hamilton,
Yes.
Ms. Gallivan,
Yes.
Mr. Senek,
Yes.
Mr. Anderson,
Yes.
Ms. Santiago Taylor,
Again?
Yes.
Yes.
and Ms. Gaositz.
Yes.
Very good. Did I miss anybody? It is a vote. Very good. Tap A, continuing, please, if we could.
Thank you, Mark. Moving ahead to kind of look at the three-week look ahead, kind of to back our way in, we have the MSBA DD submission will be going out on 4/4. We will have our documents kind of together and packaged and out the door on Friday the 1st. That way we will have it over to Compass and everybody else so that it can get submitted to the MSBA. We will be uploading our documents as we put them together for this presentation, which will, include the drawings, the specs, and all the information that goes into the binder. We're going to continue with what we did during the SD submittal to the MSBA. We will create a Google Drive and continue to upload our documents into that folder. We will give you guys access to that folder so you guys can continue to look in on what we are putting together and kind of what we are voting on for the DD submission that will be going to the MSBA and also what was in the cost estimate. We already went over the pre-qual meetings and all that. Again, we're going to continue to assemble our DD package for the MSBA submittal. We have the estimate reconciliation, as Chin previously mentioned, on the 15th. And we already talked about the working group meetings and the future school building committee meetings for the vote on the DD estimate. This is kind of the table of contents that we have for the MSBA DD submission, the binder. So we'll, again, all this stuff, Tap A is putting together along with Compass, and we will continue, I think at the end of this week, our goal is to have that folder up and running so you guys can take a look. And as we complete these items, we'll both continue to dump everything into that folder for your review. Kind of an update for where we're at on a few other things. We're continuing to wrap up our programming meetings. We're scheduling the music and PE programming meetings. We also have a landscape review for the next working group meeting, which will be this Thursday to review the landscape. Again, we kind of talked about the ER1 and phasing, and we're putting together the diagrams that Compass and our consultants along with TAP A have put together, and we'll be reviewing that at the next working group meeting, actually on the 17th, and then we'll be presenting that to you guys at the following school building committee meeting. Again, the DD development estimate set went out on the 25th. We'll be getting the estimate back on the 11th, and this date actually changed. The reconciliation meeting got moved up to the 15th so that we can then present it to the working group on the 17th. And again, our documents for the MSBA submission will be done on April 1st, so that can be submitted to the MSBA on April 4th. Anybody have any questions?
Any final questions, anybody?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah, Mr. Fisher.
Okay. You're gonna hate me for bringing this up, but it's something that I kind of missed on, and it hit me tonight. We don't have any gas coming into that building. I understand you're basically, it's gonna be electric. In the science labs, you're gonna have the handheld torches where you need it and so forth like that. And I never really thought about the generator at all. And, you know, we all want to be carbon neutral. We want to be environmentally sensitive, but we're talking about putting big diesel generators in there. And I would like to ask you to quickly take a look at what the relative cost would be to bring a gas line into that building to run, or a gas line out to run the generators. I think environmentally, it's going to be a lot better. I think it's going to be cheaper to run it. I think the gas generators are no more expensive than the electric generator, the diesel generators. So I'm just going to ask you to take a quick look and see what would be the added cost, estimate to go ahead and power up the generators with natural gas rather than diesel.
Thanks, Jack. Any other questions or comments?
Am I still on?
Yeah, Jack, right ahead.
Thank you. Once upon a time, years ago, Donnie, there's no gas on either East or Washington Street. My question is, once upon a time, we used to do in all these buildings is you'd have a dual fuel boiler, whether it be fuel oil or gas. And I haven't seen that here. My question is there any gas nearby? That's the big question for the whole school.
Jack, I think gas is currently in East Street coming up the south side of the site where the sidewalk is.
Okay.
I think it's over there from what I recall of the site surveys.
Okay, because once upon a time, you know, I've been doing it too long, all these buildings, and previous building maintenance guys, we always had a dual fuel, be either oil or gas, depending on what the price was. And Jack Fisher just tapped my brain on that. It's like, gee, maybe, you know, is there a chance that the gas might be a little bit better for us? Or that's something to explore too. I just want to throw that out only because we've done that in the past. Okay.
Yeah, I think we can take a look at
the existing school.
Yeah, I think we can take a look at what the cost would be to. I think what would end up probably happening is we might extend the line that's existing somehow instead of trying to run a whole new feed. But there are costs associated with that, and the amount of service that that you wouldn't be using. I think there's some follow-on costs in the utilities that they would that you might not recover. But
no, I understand that. That was done. Yeah, I'm going back like 20, 25 years ago when oil would shoot up, and just in case we get shut off from oil, we could just turn the switch on the boiler and go to gas. That's all.
Yeah. Well, let us do some homework. I think we hear what you guys are saying, and we'll try to get that data back to the committee.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Any other questions? If not, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Motion from Ms. Gallivan. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second from Ms. Giositz. Let me poll the committee if I could. Ms. Gallivan,
Yes.
Ms. Giositz,
Yes.
Mr. Anderson,
Yes.
Mr. Senek, Mr. Senek,
Yes.
Mr. Barrett,
Yes.
Ms. Hamilton,
Yes.
Ms. Santiago Taylor,
Yes.
Mr. Frisha,
Yes.
Dr. Goff,
Yes.
Mr. Fisher,
Yes.
and I vote yes. Did I miss it? Did I miss anybody?
And you miss Judy Conroy,
All right, Mr. Conroy, thank you.
Ms.
All
Yes, yes.
right, very good. It is a vote. Thank you, everybody. Have a good night now. Take care.
Night.
Thanks all.